Om Wage Jware Wage Jware 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 Om Wage Jware Wage Jware
Dolo Tongwa Jibe Dra No Par Jibe Kek Tarbadan Tam Je Kembe Paradu Chopra Jeba Tam Je Kis Jibe Manam Kada Nyambe Senjen Tam Je Dewa Tang Ten Tung Yao Tang Je Ni Du La Na Me Pa Yang Dabra Sobe Chanchu Rinpo Je Dobra Ja Dala Tangwa Jebe Drai Nopar Jebe Ge Tarpa Dan Tam Je Gembe Paradu Chopra Jeba Tam Je Gyusa Jebe Manangada Nyampe Senchen Tamche Deva Dan Tin Tungya Dangde Nurdu Lana Mepaya Lapra Zobe Chanchu Rinpo Je Topra Ja Dala Tawa Jebe Ja Nopar Jebe Ge Tarpa Dan Tamche Kempe Bardu Chopra Jeba Tam Jegi Se Jebe Manang Kadang Nyampe Senchen Tamche Dewa Dan Ten Tungya Dangde Nudu Lana Mepaya Tabra Zobe Chanchu Rinpo Je Topra Jo De Sangma Genki Pardu Lunga Yisum Geba Lago Mashi Pardu Lunga Yisum Geba Lago Tu Dring Ne Sunte Nema Sangta Sangki Pardu Lunga Yisum Geba Lago Zonje Jodan Sake Jonam La Chanchu Bardu Dane Kyabsu Chi Dagi Jinsu Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchir Sanje Drupra Shu Sanje Jodan Sake Jonam La Chanchu Bardu Dane Kyabsu Chi Dagi Jinsu Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchir Sanje Drupra Shu Sanje Jodan Sake Jonam La Chanchu Bardu Dane Kyabsu Chi Dagi Jinsu Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchir Sanje Drupra Shu Manam Kadam Nyampe Senchen Tamche Dewa Tang Dewe Gyundan Dembra Gyurji Dungyao Dang Dungyao Gi Gyudan Drewa Gyurji Dungyao Mepe Dewa Dangme Drewa Gyurji Niring Chadang Nidang Drewe Tangyang La Nebra Gyurji Mhanang Kadang Nyampe Senchen Tamche Dewa Dang Dewe Gendan Dembra Gyuji Dunga Dan Dunya Gi Gyudan Jawa Gyuji Dunga Mebe Dewa Dame Jawa Gyuji Nere Jadan Nidan Jawa Dang Yong La Nebra Gyuji Monon Kadan Nyambe Senjen Tomje Dewa Dan Dewe Gendan Dembra Gyuji Dunga Dan Dunya Gi Gyudan Dewa Gyuji Dunga Mebe Dewa Dame Dewa Gyuji Nirin Chada Nidan Dewe Tanyan La Nebra Gyuji. In all the worlds of the 10 directions reside Tathagatas of the 3 times. Before each of you, lions among humans, I prostrate joyfully with body, speech, and mind. And by the power of this aspiration to noble deeds, unconquerors appear vividly in my mind, with as many bodies as there are atoms in all lands. I prostrate to all you conquerors. In each atom of Buddhas, numberless as atoms, all in the midst of the heirs of the Buddhas. Thus I conceive of this Dharma Dhatu as completely filled with you conquerors in this way, with infinite oceans of praise and oceans of diverse melodies. I sing the excellent qualities of all you conquerors and praise all of you gone to bliss with the best flowers and best garlands, best music, ointments, and excellent parasols, finest lamps and superior incense. I offer to you conquerors with excellent garments and best fragrances, and sandalwood powder heap high as Mount Meru. All wondrous offerings perfectly arranged I offer to you conquerors, with these vast and unequal offerings to each and every one of you conquerors, with the power of conviction and noble deeds. I prostrate and offer to all you conquerors all the harmful deeds that I have done with my body, speech, and mind. Under the power of desire, hatred, and ignorance, I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in all the meritorious deeds of all conquerors in the 10 directions and the heirs of the Buddhas. Solitary realizers, hearers still in training and beyond, and all wandering beings. You who are lamps of the worlds of the 10 directions, who have unobstructedly attained Buddhahood through the stages of Bodhi. All you who are my protectors, please turn the unexhaled wheel of Dharma. With palms together, I earnestly beseech you who may intend to manifest final nirvana. Please remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the world, for the happiness and well-being of all wandering beings. Whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain and four continents, sun and moon, I visualize as a Buddha land and offer it. May all migratory beings experience such a pure land. To the Gurus who possess the three kayas, I offer the outer, inner, secret, and thusness offerings. With my body, wealth, and all phenomenal existence, please grant the unsurpassed supreme attainment. Whatever slight virtue that have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, we now dedicate it all to complete Bodhi. Guru Deva Dhakini Rena Mendala Pratija Soham. Please turn the wheel of Dharma of the greater, lesser, and common vehicles in accordance with the disposition and mental capacities of sentient beings. Durji Janjan Dele Naroda Mami Tapu Patu Jidin Kunkadin Sunden Savela Mesha Sajula Mayidam Jogula So one day so Doji Jinji Lo Kya Brenge no Mesa Menge Dope Samsung Yung La Kya So Meke Wat Doji Champa Jidin Kumpusha Badu Tatu Samge Kuleme Jinji Lo Shi Tu Jinding and Bubesha Nikan Sente De Dubra Jinji Lo Ho Ujin Yajin the Johnson Pema Gesa Tumpola Yasan Joking Gudum Yepe Manjunesha Duda Guru Kaduma Pukuro Keki just a da do get Jingelo Jesha So Guru Bema Sudu Min Joking Yaki Budan Nedosun Sanjay Gunjingo when you run some Chokum Tonsepa. So well, measure laws or So, good morning, good evening to everyone. So we continue with Bodhicharyavatara. Now we are in chapter 6. Last time we met, we just finished that section, which is the section that Khenpo Gunpel's commentary identifies as learning on how by accepting suffering, by accepting dukkha, and remember the footnote there, it's not the way we normally think of accepting. It's looking at from various angles how to skillfully accept dukkha. So that section is from verse 12 to 21, and we finished that last class. So, for example, accepting suffering doesn't mean, as I like to say, it doesn't mean this is the practice of turning yourself into a doormat for everyone to wipe their feet on, for everyone to step on, for everyone to bully. That is not what Shantideva is talking about. And especially at the beginning point, which most of us are at, when there are things that we can do to minimize the suffering, of course we do. What Shantideva is talking about here is when, more or less reasonable things that you can do will not take away the suffering that you are experiencing now, then he teaches us how to handle that kind of suffering. So, for example, say, if you have a toothache, then as a result of having a toothache, there's a lot of suffering, a lot of mental, emotional heaviness, pain. Accepting suffering here doesn't mean, you're like, okay, no need to call the dentist's office for an appointment. Oh, I'm not going to take any painkillers. This is accepting suffering. This is not accepting suffering the way that Shantideva is talking about. Again, Shantideva is talking about how when we have no obvious way to get out of this experience of suffering, especially at the beginning, then we learn to look at the suffering differently. In particular, here he's talking also about the kinds of suffering that will arise, especially as we commit ourselves to training in bodhicitta. Yeah, so he says, you should not be deterred so easily, especially in the context of practice. Do not be deterred so easily by little inconveniences. It is too cold, I cannot practice. It is too hot, I cannot practice. The center is too far, I cannot practice. The center is too close, I cannot practice. The teacher is in, I cannot practice. The teacher is out, I cannot practice. So mainly, this section, it's talking about the difficulties that might arise in the context of practicing, actualizing bodhicitta. Those types of difficulties, he says, we need to be brave in overcoming them. So no doubt, it's because of having experienced dukkha and recognized dukkha that then we turn to the Buddha's teachings, because we have confidence that the Buddha's teachings can help us be free from dukkha. So yes, how we start the path, how we remain on the path is because we have had enough experience of dukkha, and then enough of saying, I don't want this to just continue like this, and then I want to put an end to it. So motivated by a desire to end dukkha, we turn to the Buddha's path. However, on this path to awakening, we cannot become free from dukkha if we fear dukkha. So first, fear of dukkha put you on the path. But once you get on the path, your relationship with dukkha will need to change. And one of the first change is you begin to not fear dukkha that much. Meaning you have to be willing to carry that dukkha around a little bit. The difference now and from now and before is, before, without a choice, you are stuck with dukkha. Now, in a way, you're still stuck with dukkha, but you are now stuck with dukkha with understanding and awareness. Understanding and awareness that is building and growing. So then the experience of dukkha, the arising of dukkha, now instead of sinking you further into the ocean of confusion and suffering, can become a way for you to practice on how to handle dukkha. So now this next section from verses 22 to 33, Khenpo Kumpel's commentary identified this section as practicing Kshanti based on an understanding of ultimate reality. Well, or you could say the practice of Kshanti based on looking deeper into beyond the surface. So let's now read these verses. I'm not angry with my bile and other humors, fertile source of suffering and pain. So why should living beings give offense? They likewise are impelled by circumstance. Although they are unlooked for, undesired, these ills afflict us all the same. And likewise, though unwanted and unsought, defilements nonetheless insistently arise. Never thinking, now I will be angry. People are impulsively caught up in anger. Irritation likewise comes, though never plans to be experienced. All defilements of whatever kind, the whole variety of evil deeds are brought about by circumstances. None is independent, none autonomous. Conditions once assembled have no thought that they will now give rise to some result, nor does that which is engendered think that it has been produced. The primal substance, as they say, and that which has been called the self, do not arise designedly, and do not think, I will become. For that which is not born does not exist, so what could want to come to be? And permanently drawn toward its object, it can never cease from being so. Indeed, the self, if permanent, is certainly inert like space itself. And should it meet with other factors, how could they affect it since it is unchanging? If, when conditions act on it, it stays just as it was before, what influence have these conditions had? They say that these are agents of the self, but what connection could that be between them? All things then depend on other things, and these likewise depend. They are not independent. Knowing this, we will not be annoyed at things that are like magical appearances. Resistance, you may say, is out of place, for what will be opposed by whom? The stream of sorrow is cut through by patience. There is nothing out of place in our assertion. Thus, when enemies or friends are seen to act improperly, remain serene and call to mind that everything arises from conditions. So this whole section, looking at the last verse, thus kind of summarizes the whole point in these 10 or so verses. The conclusion he wants us to arrive at is, therefore, thus, when either enemies or friends, doesn't matter, those we hold close to ourselves, those we push as far as possible, if we see them acting improperly, whether it directly pertains to us or not, whether they are acting improperly, like you perceive them as harming you, or them harming themselves or harming others. The point is that when you see that and it causes a lot of anger, maybe not the loud kind of anger, but anger the way that we have been looking at anger.
and also Kshanti. And because, as I said again and again for this chapter, this word anger and patience, they are not our kind of day-to-day use of this word. I mean, they're related, of course, but we're talking about anger in the most basic level, most subtle level, which is, annoyance at what has turned up. Right? Annoyance, not wanting whatever it is that has turned up. So when that happens, Shantideva says, remain serene and call to mind. So he says, first, don't act. Second, now bring to mind how everything arises from conditions. In brief, or one way to summarize, don't take it personally. We're so delicate, we're so fragile. When somebody smiles at us, we take it personally. Somebody doesn't smile at us, we take it personally. Somebody greets us, we take it personally. Somebody doesn't greet us, we take it personally. Now, the fact of this fragility, in a way, again, if you know how to skillfully use this fragility, it can also help us see how the control that we're looking for is constantly eluding us, constantly seem to be running away from us, the control that we would like to have. And so this is a delicate balance, in a way, we are training to have better control of our feelings. But it has to be done in a way where you program into the attempt to kind of have better control over the way you react over your feelings. It's also an acceptance that this is all interdependently arising. And so it's not like a kind of control that you're developing by being very rigid. In fact, it's a kind of control that you develop by being very flexible, by being soft. So this is sort of like the idea of, Tai Chi, for example. The principles of Tai Chi, which is to overcome force by yielding. By softness. And so we have to remember this, even though overall you'll find further on, Shantideva using very kind of almost like militaristic kind of these macho imagery of battle, going to war. Again, you have to remember, who he was talking to. He's talking to this bunch of monks, young monks, studying at Nalanda. And whatever you think of monks, substitute it with, a bunch of guys at boarding school. So it's kind of that kind of environment. So he's egging them by saying, you think you are strong, you think you are smart, powerful and everything, the real power, the real killing, is to kill the afflictive emotions, not to fight with your neighbors or, this segment of Nalanda, rivalry with that segment, like Harry Potter and in Hogwarts, all the different houses. I'm sure Nalanda has that, the cool monks and the nerdy monks and then the wealthy monks and the country bumpkin monks and not getting respect and resentment here and competition there. All of that exists. So Shantideva is talking to that. So even though he uses this kind of like, you have to be determined, you have to be strong, you have to be manly, don't read this out of context, because the path, if you are rigid, then your application of the path, will not work so well. So it's being determined, but also appreciating how everything is interdependent. You cannot force things to happen. You need to have patience. So 22, he says, he says, we are usually, not angry at the bile and humors. This is referring to Ayurvedic and as well as Tibetan Chinese medicine. which identifies, right, an imbalance of the different types of energies in our body. So the humors, so also the Greek system has that. So he says, you know, like they are the fertile source of suffering and pain. But whenever we have suffering and pain, you know, we don't go, oh, I am so upset, you know, with those winds energy. I'm so upset, you know, with that. He says, we don't do that. Then he says, so in the same way, why take offense when we see others, people, causing suffering? Because in the same way, both others and these, like, you know, energy in our bodies that, you know, give rise to illness when they're out of balance, they are not in control. That they occur impelled by circumstance, he says. So he is wanting us to do a thought experiment, so to say. That in the same way that we're not angry at the true cause of our physical ailments, we should not be angry at people when they do not behave according to our expectations, because they too are not autonomous. In other words, they are impelled by circumstance. They are pushed by circumstance. So you say, can you see that, you know? Although disease and illness, you know, are not things that we go looking for or we desire, nonetheless, you know, when the circumstances are right for them to gather, they will turn up. He says, he's using this as an analogy to say, likewise, you know, when people, quote unquote, bring us problems, cause problems for us, or for those we care for, they are also unlooked for, undesired, but nonetheless, they have turned up. And so verse 23, likewise, though unwanted and unsought, defilements nonetheless insistently arise. So this one, I think, is to be applied not just, you know, with regards to defilements arising in others, although this is primarily what this is saying here. That the people who cause us problems, you know, they did not go, tomorrow I would like to have 20 ounces of jealousy so that I can send it in the direction of Hunlai. No, They never ordered it. They never prepared for it. You know, they never, fill in application forms to cause problems for me. Defilements arose in them. They lash out. They act upon it. In the same way, that, illness comes to us. Now, of course, we could we could kind of slightly say to Shantideva, maybe pull him aside. Actually, illness, we kind of summon that, based on not taking care of our health and all of that, but okay, let's not argue with him, right? He's making a very useful point for us to put into, you could say, our bag of tools. Remember, to develop the path is to have a good set of tools in our tool set for solving the problem of samsara. So one of the tools we need is, when we experience someone bringing us problems, causing us suffering, we should play out this scenario. Did this person, plan this? Plan their anger against me, plan their jealousy against me, plan their, annoyance towards me? No. They were gripped by their kleshas in the moment. Then they acted. Now he says, okay, you might think, like these imbalances in the elements that give rise to disease or illness, unlike people, they don't have intention to harm me. They're completely circumstantial. So then he says, no, actually, so verse 24, he says, actually the people who want to harm you, or the people who are causing harm to you, causing problems for you, they also never really said, and now I will get angry. He says, people are just impulsively caught up in anger. Verse 24, second line in my translation that I'm using, it says, people are just impulsively caught up in anger. Irritation likewise comes, though never plans to be experienced. It's not like irritation, annoyance, anger. Say, okay, now this should come. There were no intentional. Like just think about ourselves, using ourselves as a way to gauge about other people, which is, can you remember a time where you go, where you plan, you say, okay, this afternoon at 4, while having tea, I'm going to get angry. No, says likewise. If you can give yourself that much, you have to give others that much, It's like we think, that anger, it just happens to me. Oh, but those other people, when they have anger, they plan it all out. Then verse 25, he goes deeper now. 26, 27, 28, 29. All these verses after that is to explicate, to kind of further unfold what is said in 25. And so let's look at 25. 25 says, all defilements of whatever kind, the whole variety of evil deeds are brought about by circumstances, conditions. None of these defilements, none of these evil deeds, harmful deeds. Evil in Buddhism means harmful. Harmful means productive of dukkha. So evil doesn't need to have horns, and pitchfork, Evil in Buddhism means what's harmful. What is harmful? That which is harmful is that which produces dukkha. all of these, he says, none of them are independent. None of them autonomous, meaning none of them turn up all by themselves and with a will. They are all circumstantial, as we commonly would say it. They are all interdependent in more technical Buddhist expression. So it goes back to that main point I made at the very beginning. This whole section is basically saying, as a feeling, right? Basically, it's saying, take away all the fancy ways of talking, the more formal way of Buddhist philosophy, take away all of that. The point is, there is nothing personal here. Why do you keep insisting on suffering by making it personal? But that's our story. Here, Shantideva is teaching on the topic of emptiness or interdependence. Emptiness and interdependence are two sides of the same coin. Yeah, of course, in chapter 9, the chapter on wisdom, he will focus completely on this issue. But here, he's already introducing a little bit. So here it's more talking about interdependently arising. So 26, verse 26, conditions. So conditions once assembled have no thought that they will now give rise to some result. Oh, now I'm going to turn into suffering for this person. Oh, now I'm going to turn into happiness for this person. Conditions are not like that. Nor does what is engendered think that it has been produced. So in other words, no, when anger comes out, then it says, haha, here I am. Or when jealousy comes up, here I am. Now again, when it happens to us, we are more in tune with the ultimate way things are, and we tend to not take it so personally. But when we see it happening in other people, we become very unforgiving.
So next in 27, Shantideva is using some vocabulary that his contemporaries, his educated monks of his time, will recognize this vocabulary. So the first thing here on 27, what's called primal substance. Primal substance in Sanskrit, there are a few terms. Prakriti is primal substance, or Purusha is also primal substance, depending on which kind of philosophical tradition you belong to, and therefore what vocabulary you use. But basically, non-Buddhist, this is non-Buddhist alternative competing, you could say, spiritual systems of that time use this expression, primal substance. So he says primal substance as they say. So here they talking about those who follow other systems. The primal substance as they say, and that which has been called the self. So here is another kind of metaphysical term, the self. Here we're not talking about when you say, I'm going to go to the market. Not that kind of self, that I. Here we're talking about the kind of metaphysical, philosophical concept of self, which in Sanskrit is called Atman. So basically, Shantideva says, neither of these two, if you believe in these kinds of things, if you believe in, this kind of like abiding, unchanging divine self, which is the self here, or if you believe in that this whole world is created out of one substance, one primal, that means one substance, one essence that have always existed. He says, even if you believe in these, neither of these things came about with any kind of like thought or plan. I will become. This is the translation I have here, the last line of verse 27. I'm going to turn up. He says, it's not like that.
So in this belief of like kind of this you could say metaphysical or philosophical position, yeah, of like, oh, this world consists of Prakriti and Purusha. Prakriti is like you could say the inanimate stuff. Yeah? They say all of that came from one kind of essence. And then Purusha is like the conscious aspect. And all of that came from another essence. And everything that exists is like these two coming together and interacting with each other. Basically here, Shantideva is saying, even if you believe in that, when you look into it, so 28, he says, for that which is not born does not exist. So what could want to come to be? And then he goes, and permanently drawn towards its object, it can never cease from being so. Okay, here, let's see how to put this one. Because here he's actually engaging some very complex criticism of those types of beliefs. Yeah. And I neither have the skill nor, frankly, interest in get into too much of these types of debates, right? So for me, it's kind of like taking a step back and say, okay, there is an original kind of philosophical context that Shantideva is talking to. He has to address this because he's not talking to just a general group of monks or general group of people. He's talking to basically people who are at places where they're debating these things. But neither you nor I are in that, right? But it doesn't mean that then it's completely meaningless. There are implications. And so here, what he's doing is, I believe, yeah, for us, what he's pointing out to is, so the first, the past couple of verses, he wants us to see how everything is interdependently arising. Now, what he wants to say, to take it to the next level is to say, now, if you think that everything, if you, okay, accept that everything is interdependently arising, then perhaps you might start to think, then in all the things that interdependently arise, there is like a, there is physical, and there is like consciousness, mental. Now, maybe in these two, some kind of self can be found there, basically. And therefore, you cannot say, oh, that person didn't plan it. And maybe on a very kind of subtle level, they did plan to harm me, and therefore I have reason to be angry with them. Shantideva is saying, no, even in that way of thinking, you cannot find any self, any one actually in control saying, I will be angry now. I will be angry now. I will be jealous now. It says it cannot be found. That's 27, 28. 29, 30, he is engaging another philosophical tradition. So in Khenpo Kumpel's commentary and elsewhere too, they identify for you which Hindu group Shantideva is critiquing.
Dr. Lan, can you repeat again about the Purusha and Prakriti? Is the inanimate stuff?
The Prakriti is the inanimate, the Purusha is the animate. So this is like a more sophisticated division of things. According to other traditions, basically Shantideva is kind of like addressing those ideas. And as I say, I neither have the skill nor really to confess interest in getting too deep into, the ins and outs of these positions. So I lazily summarized that 26 and 28, he's saying, even if you entertain more sophisticated ideas and try to come up with like, well, see, that is the cause of my problem. He says, this doesn't make any sense. Uh, 29 and 30, again, he continues, also addressing, as I said, another position. There are 6, at least, kind of Hindu positions about like the nature of self. Is there a self or no self? And if there's self, what kind of self? If there's no self, what kind of no self? So I would say that, a lot of the traditional commentary on these verses here tend to emphasize how Shantideva is showing that the non-Buddhist position or these positions are inconsistent. I don't know that much about these topics, but my sense of here is he's not really showing how like they are inconsistent, as in, oh, you guys are wrong, you guys are wrong. He's actually, what he's doing is more like, even if you accept these systems, let me show you how there is nothing personal here. Therefore, don't, on the account of these beliefs, give yourself an excuse to kind of to put the blame, so to say, on, see, this element purposely caused suffering, or this self purposely brought up jealousy or anger. So this is what he's trying to do here. So 31, 32, 33 is sort of the conclusion for this section that I think for us is what we need to take from this section. More easily we can take from this section. So we'll take a quick break and then we will come back to this like important conclusion in the last 3 verses of this section. Important conclusion to draw from the discussion that he's engaging in.
Wage jware mum, 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 wage jware mum. Wage jware mum, 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 wage jware wage joare mum 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 wage joare wage joare mum 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 wage joare 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 wage jware mum 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 wage jware mum
So those of you who have the same translation that I have in English, you can see, you can read in the footnotes of that translation, really long footnotes, on which Hindu system it is critiquing and all the ins and outs of that. So we're not going to go into those details because, first you have to learn the Hindu system, then you have to learn like, Shantideva's emptiness system, and in order to really understand. So, but we will have to kind of go into that territory when we get to chapter 9. Just as a warning, so to say, or promise, like, don't worry, if you really like this sort of stuff, we will handle a little bit of it when we get to chapter 9. Maybe at that point, I'll hire a substitute teacher for that section. Actually, another great scholar, Lama Mipam Rinpoche, also has a commentary, chapter 9 specifically, and translated. The 8th Karmapa has a commentary, I believe it's the 8th, also translated into English. So chapter 9 is really tough. Now 31, this conclusion I was talking about, it's Shantideva says, all things then depend on all other things, and these likewise depend. They are not independent, and these otherwise are dependent and not independent. Knowing this, we will not be annoyed at things that are like magical appearances. So here he is saying, regard all our experiences as like magical appearances. When we see how, each thing is dependent on at least one other thing, but often more than one other thing. And so then among those other things, each of those things are further dependent on other things. When you really kind of consider that, even like for a moment, you will see, how magical it is. Right? That anything even happens, and happens the way it happens in this moment rather than another moment. So the effect of really understanding this point in 31 is not, it should not be, if the effect that you have from this is like, oh, it hurts my mind, it hurts my head to even think about all this, then you are taking this in the wrong way. You know that you're taking this in the right way, that is producing the effect that Shantideva wants to produce, is when you experience the spaciousness. Right? You are not like stuck anymore. Rigidity is released. Rigidity in terms of how we respond to things, how we relate to things, opens up. 32 is an important follow-up from 31. Because in 31, another kind of wrong direction to take what is said in 31 might be then the idea or the thought that, well, if everything is interdependent and so vast, this interdependence, what's the point of doing anything? Yeah. What's the point, you know? 32 is offered as a as an important follow-up from 31. So 32, he hypothetically says, he says, someone might say, resistance, you may say, is out of place. For what will be opposed by whom? So here he's hypothetically, he says, you know, then you might say, you know, well, in that case, why practice restraint? You know, why practice restraint? Why practice resistance? If the nature of anger is emptiness, then just let it be, you know. It says, what's the point? So here, Shantideva is saying, then you have become fixated. You have become, you're grasping at the ultimate truth. Not understanding that the other side of ultimate truth is relative truth. And we have to pay attention to relative truth, just as we have to pay attention to ultimate truth. So the relationship between ultimate and relative, again, at this point, is not, oh, relative is preliminary truth. Ultimate truth is finally where you want to get to. But rather, right view, or the view, is understanding that what you call ultimate and what we call relative are two sides of the same coin. So 32, the third line says, the stream of sorrow is cut through by patience. So here it's saying, as long as we still experience a stream of sorrow, that reality cannot be dismissed by simply saying, oh, well, ultimately, you know, none of this is real. You can repeat that to the end of time, and still be miserable. So you have to attend to that stream of sorrow. So as long as the stream of sorrow continues in your experience, then Shantideva says, then this practice of Kshanti is essential. Yeah, for me, this further highlights the importance of recognizing the healing or therapeutic nature of these teachings. That yes, even though they have philosophical implications, they have metaphysical implications that people who like metaphysics or like philosophy can debate endlessly. In the end, the Buddha wasn't a philosopher. The Buddha wasn't a metaphysician. The Buddha was the supreme healer. He wants to heal us of dukkha. And so in this section, even though Shantideva kind of ventures a little bit into debating philosophy, because he's bringing up the ultimate truth analysis, emptiness, interdependence, right? And because when he brings that up, he knows in his audience, there will be some monks who will say, well, what about what the Hindu says about da-da-da and da-da-da? Right? So he addresses that. And his point here is like, don't turn these teachings into a philosophical point, but rather apply these teachings to do what the Buddha says these teachings primarily do, which is to pacify and to remove suffering, dukkha. So 33, thus when enemies or friends. So this is like the take-home point, as I would say. We say the take-home lesson. What lesson can we take home from class today to apply, to use? So the take-home lesson here is, thus, when enemies or friends are seen to act improperly, in ways that are causing harm to us, to those that we love, or to themselves, remain serene and call to mind that everything arises from conditions. Don't fixate, okay? I know, you will be like, well, does this mean that I don't try to stop them from harming themselves? No. He's not talking about that. Here he is concerned with providing you with how you protect your own reaction, your own mind, your own heart, before you even try to go intervene and do something about the situation. In other words, if you yourself aren't protected from the afflictive emotions, and which is what we all often do, Shantideva will say that ultimately this has to do with this confusion of self-grasping. Even if it seems like, feels like, looks like, oh, you're being heroic, you're going to go help others. But we're so obscured that we don't even know how to protect our own minds. How are we going to supposed to protect others? So when unconducive conditions arise, circumstances arise, first thing is stop the way that we usually react to those circumstances. So first, stop our habitual pattern of reacting, which is reacting with anger, both loud anger and quiet anger. First, we need to have that capacity to know how to stop reacting that way. Then only can we act skillfully, which is the actions of bodhicitta, action bodhicitta. So you have to read these teachings, always within a broader context. Don't simply quote, one verse out and like it's hanging in the air like that. No, it's always within the broader context of how this is all practiced as a single path to awakening. And so this is really important. So let's see, any questions, comments? Yes.
Dr. Lai,
Yes.
I was thinking when about earlier on in these verses where Shantideva is talking about anger being impulsive and, you know, evil deeds arising out of conditions as sort of impulsively. I was thinking about some of the most evil deeds in history seem to have been, you know, highly organized and planned in advance by large numbers of people. And so I was wondering how we sort of incorporate those kind of actions by human beings into our sort of understanding of what he was saying there.
Yes, of course, you know. Shantideva is not unaware of, you know, wars and, you know, wars of aggression, all of that around him. But he is not dealing with that level of things. He's saying that, okay, even if you want to talk about war, where does war come from? It comes from a lot of individuals joining forces together. Okay, individuals. Where do individuals come from? Right? So he traces it back to how the afflictive emotions arise in each individual unplanned. He's taking it to that level. Yeah? So he's not saying therefore you cannot make big plans to stop wars and to stop acts of aggression. Like I said, you know, he's not saying don't do those things. He's not naive on that level at all. He's concerned here with mind training. He's concerned here with mind training. This is not statecraft. This is not how to manage, you know, the messiness of the Middle East right now, for example. This is not how to manage, you know, The wars that are going on now, he's not talking about that. I, for one, always say, I think we over apply Buddha's teachings. We try to figure out how to solve every problem with the Dharma. I don't think so. Then we lose focus on, where the Dharma can do its best work. And where it can do the best work, we usually don't want to do that work. Because it's very uncomfortable. So we have the distraction of, let's philosophize. But in part, it's because I think people want to, I mean teachers, in wanting to make Buddhism, Dharma attractive, they make it sound so relevant to every single problem that you have. Buddhist economics, Buddhist psychology, Buddhist politics, Buddhist social order. Yes, Judy.
In sort of thinking about these more global issues.
Oh, actually, Judy, sorry. I'm now doing the problem that let them translate. I forgot myself that this needs to be translated first. Yes, Judy, go ahead now.
In thinking about these global issues, it still gets down to the individual, because wherever these interdependencies come from, we tend to act on those without
Yes.
clarity. And so we continue to create more and more that attitude, if you will. And then we join others with
Yes.
attitude. Before you know
Correct.
it, about this explosion. So it really does explain many of the problem, probably most.
Oh yeah. But my point is more like, but it doesn't necessarily mean, that the solution.
Right. Well, the solution is right here.
Yeah, solution right here on that level of things. I think there is like, you could say there is, what's the word? There's chronic, right? And the Buddha's solution is solution for the chronic level.
And if we are being good Buddhist and focusing on the ultimate, we still have to deal with our relative circumstances.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so
The acute side is very complicated in its own way.
right.
The acute suffering and its immediate causes and all of that is very complicated in its own way. And the rest of the world has, tried to find, ways to take care of that. So if there's anything to kind of have the Buddha Dharma have an impact, so let's talk about that, right? On the acute problems, which, as Peter was pointing out, like, there are groups of people sitting around, making plans how to kill off another group of people. So that's the acute. That we could infuse the Dharma into those situations, but it will take a lot of skill in understanding the acute circumstances and problems, wedded with the Dharma. But the Dharma insight remains true no matter.
Well, the Dharma insight does not preclude planning.
Oh no, yeah.
And so,
As I said, I mean, the point, right? It's like, you're not learning to be a doormat here.
yeah, and you can plan to hurt.
Yeah, and you can tell people, where they should wipe their feet.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
I'm trying. Hi, Dr. Lai, thank you. Yeah, I had to find the unmute button. The comment is more, I think it's more of a confession, and maybe that leads to a question of some sort. I don't know.
10 Hail Marys is the
yeah.
solution.
Okay, thank you. The later verses from today's section in some ways make more sense to me than the very first verse. All the way back to 22, where there's this claim that I'm not angry with my bile and other humors. Because I know I've been angry, even if it's not a loud anger all the time. I feel all the time that kind of from pain or ankle or something, any sort of malady, a frustration. That is like that. I like the conditions of the buried flame in the swamp, right? That burst into real anger.
Yes.
So right off the bat, I felt lost.
Yeah, I mean, like right now, we're all angry at COVID, But again, his point is just generally speaking, nobody goes around, oh, this evil, But we do. Yes, of course we do, Yeah, so, his examples, again, Buddhists make this, even these commentaries from great masters, sometimes too reverent, So every word Shantideva says must be true, and always true, It's like, we're not fundamentalists. We don't relate to our Dharma teachings in this way. We should not relate to Dharma teachings in this way. So, some examples that Shantideva, give will make more sense than others. Some of it you like, no, that's kind of weak. But I've also experienced at some point, some other time when you read it, you go, oh, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah, so to clarify, Shantideva is not saying, like I said, he's not naive. He's not saying that groups of people don't sit around planning to exterminate other groups of people. What he's saying is the anger and the confusion that is causing them to sit around to plan how to exterminate the other group of people, that anger and confusion doesn't come from them going, yes, I would like to have anger towards these people. No, there are circumstances, There are circumstances. Likewise, if you think about it, right? Because of my circumstances, I don't get how you can hate another group of people that much that you will join with your group to plan how to exterminate the other group. So what he wants us to see is how circumstances, and given that circumstances have so many points where we cannot control, therefore he's saying, be kind. Be kind even to those who are sitting around trying to exterminate other people. But being kind to those people doesn't mean saying, hey, so how can I help you? How can I make your plan of exterminating the other group easier? No, obviously, we all know that he's not talking about that. But he's talking about, don't direct your anger at them. See how, they are not in control. Afflictive emotions are in control. Further down this chapter, he will talk about, therefore, the afflictive emotions are the enemies. Then he will talk about, let's, beat them down. Yes. Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, this kind of goes along with the last chapter on verse 79, where I understand, understanding our own anger and settling that down. And it's so freeing to think about interdependence. Mm-hmm. And you have your mind calm and you see that someone really is harming themselves and harming others. Mm-hmm. And then 79 is talking about speaking coherently, appropriately,
yes,
and pleasantly.
Yes.
Sometimes I wonder how you can do the pleasantly, or, when you see someone as being really mean to another person. Mm-hmm. And how do you put those two together? I mean,
elsewhere, there's also wrathful methods, So again,
mm-hmm. Don't
be a fundamentalist.
Yeah.
The entire 84,000 is a complete path to awakening,
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think shutting your mouth sometimes is harmful too.
Yeah. So the point is that, it's not so simple. Mm-mm. So often we think, it's so simple. Stop killing each other. Well, yes. But you know what? It's not. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, for example, 79, right? Speak coherently, appropriately, clear in meaning, pleasantly, rid yourself of craving and aversion from the last chapter. So there, it's given in the context of, remember the chapter is on vigilant introspection. So again, this pertains to this specific advice here is, in order to encourage a more careful mind, a mind that remembers what the Buddha taught and know how to apply it in the moment, then behaving in this way is more likely to give you the ability to remember the teachings. Also in this section, it's about how to generally carry yourself so that you don't turn others off from being attracted to the Dharma. Because they know you're a Dharma practitioner. And they say, well, if a Dharma practitioner, behaves in this outrageous way, I have no need for this Dharma. I myself have felt that way, like, oh, if this is supposed to be the great teacher or great reincarnation, then I don't need Mara at this point. I felt that way, yeah, of course, my own deluded perception probably, but nonetheless, again, you have to see where a particular advice or what is turning up, right? There is a broader point being made. My graduate school advisor, he often likes to say, he says, Manjushri comes with a sword. Don't forget that. One of the names of Manjushri is actually Manjugosha. Manjugosha means sweet voice, sweet speech. Manjugosha. So if we take seriously, you know, how he's represented, this sword that he holds, you know, and because, you know, he's youthful, painted handsome, you know, very clean, very good looking, you know, peaceful looking, and he's called the sweet voice one, you tend to forget that he holds a sword. There's flames coming out of that sword, you know. So my advisor says, don't forget Manjushri comes with a sword as well. Yeah, so today we will stop here. In the next section on this Kashanti, Shantideva takes us into these thought experiments. I'll call them thought experiments, which is, he's like, well, you know, if like, so he's basically what he does in this next section. It's like, let's look further into it. And he says, if someone beats you with a stick, you know, and then you get angry, who are you angry at, you know? And then we're like, well, I'm angry at the guy that beat me with the stick. Then he will say, you know, wait, let me ask you a question. What is the direct cause of that pain? It's like, well, it's the stick. And he says, oh, so there is a, so it's the stick. Then shouldn't you be angry with the stick? Then he will say things like, not only is it the stick, but you also have a body that is enough, in a way you could say a body that is like soft enough so that when a stick hits it, it becomes painful. And so he says, your aggressor has wielded a stick, you have wielded a body, these two came together. Who are we to blame? So again, you know, in this section, it is not to apply to, you know, in situations where someone is beaten up, you walk up and you say, well, what can I say? You got a body, the guy that beat you up got a stick, these two came together, okay, take care. These are thought experiments. These are not, you know, how to solve the problems of the world. Thought experiments to help us refine our intentions. Not thought experiments just for the heck of it, but thought experiments for us to help refine our intentions. So we should not forget, you know, this is about bodhicitta. But bodhicitta is such a vast topic that then all these, you know, different verses, different chapters, they're all working towards excellent and precious bodhicitta. Where it has not arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher until both bodhicittas are actualized.
Changju sem chorin boje ma ge ba nam ge gyuje ge ba nyam pa me pa yang gong ne gong du pel wor shu. Okay, so see you all next Tuesday. So a reminder that next Saturday, we will not have class because I will be on the road. I'll be teaching a retreat actually next Saturday up in the mountains in the rural area. But next Tuesday, I will be involved in the making of a sand mandala, but we still plan to have class nonetheless. So next Tuesday we will have class, but this Saturday no class. Next Saturday also no class. I'll still be on the road. That Saturday I am not able to do class either, but we will meet this coming Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Lai.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Thank you.
Adios.
Thank